Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Bacon Bits and Bites podcast. And I'm your host, Karen Swizik. And today's guest is Ali Shah, the CEO and founder of TapeReal. TapeReal is a social platform where human connection, authenticity, and meaningful content come to life. Welcome to the show, Ali.
Thank you for having me here.
I'm super excited to chat with you today. So, before we get right into TapeReal, I'm really interested in learning about your entrepreneurial background because while I was doing my research on you, I came across that you're a serial entrepreneur. You've started like several companies. So I'm curious to know like how you got started. And also another question too, actually, is growing up, like, did you come from a family of entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so my father was a banker by profession, but when we immigrated to Canada, he basically couldn't get into the banking industry due to not having local Canadian experience. And so he basically had to roll up his sleeves and figure something out to feed his family. And so he actually opened up a couple franchise shops, Mr. Subs, in Calgary at the time. And so I kind of grew up around, like, I was around 12 at the time. And so I kind of got to witness, the setting up of the stores and like the opening, the busy lunch rushes, and I got to hang out sometimes when my mom or my sisters were away, and my dad needed to watch me, so we'd have a little television in the back, a little black and white little uh, TV where I would watch like the hockey games, and so that's kind of how I got my exposure to uh, you know uh, how anyone can start a business if they put their heart and mind to it.
Wow.
Yeah, and then since then I've always like been thinking of business ideas and really been interested in starting up something of my own as well. So when I moved out to Toronto in 2004, I actually did the same thing that my dad did, and I opened up my own Subway franchise.
Oh.
And yeah, I just kind of like wanted to learn what it was like to run a business. I learned a lot about like franchisors, local marketing, operations, hiring, payroll, all the. It's like a crash course in entrepreneurship because you literally have to wear all the hats to run a business like that. And then I ended up selling the store in 2007. Um, I then started a location based marketing app, which was kind of building up off of my Subway experience. Because one of the challenges I had as a Subway store owner was that I was paying 4.5% royalty to Subway to basically for advertising. And most of their campaigns were like national campaigns, like eat at Subway, that's about it. And so from
Mhm.
a local franchisee perspective, I, like the campaigns were great from a branding perspective, but um, I was thinking of ideas for like the local franchisee who needs to get foot traffic into his store. Uh,
Right.
and so that inspired me to build this location based marketing app where franchisors could upload all their locations and basically target ads or promotions based on each individual location or marketing area. Um, and yeah, that was quite the learning experience. I learned a lot about mobile app development. This was like in 2010 when apps were like literally only 3 years old. Um, and then also like the challenges of having a two-sided marketplace where you have customers, um, but then you need the restaurants in order to get the customers and vice versa. And then since then, like I, was continuing to work in my field of digital analytics as well. So I was bootstrapping a lot of these business ideas. um, and so I have a boutique sort of consultancy in digital analytics, web and mobile analytics. Um, and then I had this other idea that I was working on, another sort of tech startup around the ad space, the advertising space. Uh, the best way to describe it is sort of like an air miles program for websites. So you kind of get rewards when you visit certain websites, which you can then like cash out into gift cards and stuff. And that was also a very interesting learning experience. But yeah, so it's been quite the journey.
Yeah, it sounds like you've had very interesting entrepreneurial journey. So what made you decide to start TapeReal?
Well, I mean, looking at modern day social platforms, I just found them to be very noisy uh, and also catering to a very young generation. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I feel like they've gravitated more towards how can we entertain and create viral content, and it seems like that's all it's about. And a lot of creators sometimes will um, attach their level of success based on how viral they go. And I find that I mean, it's great to create that type of content. There's nothing wrong with it, but it kind of shifts the focus of what social media I think was about from or supposed to be about, which was connecting people, learning from each other as human beings and finding meaning in our lives. So I just wanted to build a space where people can be themselves, they can share their art, their knowledge and creativity with the world, and where human connection and, authenticity and meaningful content comes first.
And I'm curious to know because, correct me if I'm wrong, Tape Reel was started in 2018.
Well, it was incorporated in that year, and
Okay.
then we started building. We didn't launch in alpha until August 2019.
Okay. So, what were the early days like? Like, I'm curious to know about like what were some of the obstacles that you encountered, and how has it changed since you guys have initially launched?
Yeah, so when we first launched, we were. I mean, the idea was to encourage people to talk to each other more, right? Because that's what our sort of main focus was. It still is to a certain degree, because we still have that feature on our app. And so I in version one, you couldn't post an update to TapeReal unless you were speaking to somebody. So you had
Mm.
to literally call a friend or tell them, hey, download this app. I'm going to call you on it, and then we're going to record an update together. And
Oh, okay.
that was sort of designed to create more connectivity between people, and also to kind of go down this ethos of just natural conversations and insights that come from great conversations between people. Uh, you know, when when I was young, my grandmother passed away, and I don't really have any memories of how she spoke or some of her stories. And so, part of the idea for me was like, you can record a conversation like a memory, and that can be your timeline, right? Like right now, your timeline is all photos and videos, but with tape reel, it would be like your conversations as memories. And so we launched with that, and then based on initial sort of early adopter user feedback, um, they were finding it challenging to sync up with people, coordinating times, and then having calls, sometimes not connecting and stuff. So, a lot of our users were asking for the ability to also post solo, and then basically having asynchronous conversations as opposed to synchronous. So we launched that in like I think it was November of 2019, and then thereafter we were continuing to build. We allowed for creators to publish to the web. We were actually called Tapebook before we were called TapeReal. So
Mm.
our initial brand name was Tapebook, but uh, some of the feedback we got was that it reminded people too much of Facebook.
Oh,
And
yeah.
yeah, and with their reputation, they didn't really like it. And then the other thing was that Facebook was basically trademarking the word book in Europe and North America. And so,
Really? Oh, wow.
yeah, and I didn't want any legal issues. So, luckily, I came across a .com domain name with TapeReal and decided to buy it for like $2.99, which is hard to come by with .coms. Um, so yeah, we developed the ability to publish to the web, and then the pandemic basically hit, and yeah, there were some challenges. Part of my development team started to focus elsewhere. There was a lot of uncertainty, uh, and yeah, it was a really tough time. I was in a tough situation where I was even thinking of like, okay, like you know, considering all this uncertainty, maybe I should stop
Right.
working on this. But you know, some of the best startups were built during times of like recession and uncertainty. WhatsApp was one of them, and there's countless other examples. And so yeah, I just kept pushing forward, and hired uh, another development team, kind of rebuilt um, the platform, and then started rolling out new features in 2020. Made some improvements, added the ability to monetize, and now we're here, 2021.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Sorry,
And I
22.
Oh, yeah, that's
I'm
right.
still
And I
stuck in
agreed with you.
2021.
So funny. Yeah, and I actually really like the name TapeReal. I think it's more fitting, and the fact that like you also use the word like the word real, like REAL, like, and the way I interpret it is like, like these real authentic moments, but at the same time a play on words, like a tape reel when you think of like, back in the day with like tapes, right? So yeah, I
Exactly,
think a
exactly.
much better fitting name. Since you're talking about like development and then you have experience developing apps, I'm curious to know, like, what are some of the challenges that come along with developing an app?
Well, I mean, one is that there's no universe. Well, I mean, there are universal programming languages that'll allow you to publish on all platforms at once. React Native is one of them, um, but that also comes with its own set of limitations, uh, and then you kind of have to manage and test across various computer screens, telephone screens, and sizes and operating systems. Uh, but you know, part of the challenge with, for example, with Apple's app store is that they have very strict guidelines, and if you're not fully aware of all their guidelines from a legal standpoint, they'll just reject your app and they won't allow you to
Oh,
publish. When we initially launched, they rejected the app because we didn't have the ability to uh, uh, report users or block certain users from contacting you, and so we had to. What we thought was just a simple MVP turned out to be not enough to get approved on the App Store, and so we had to develop all these extra features just to get approved. Um, some other challenges, I think, is that there's a lot of apps, a lot of competition.
mm,
It's becoming easier and easier to develop apps, and and then you have to compete for downloads, and
right.
retaining users on an app is also challenging. It's not you have to have a very sticky or um, like a really engaging value prop that resonates with an audience that will lead you to product market fit. And so navigating through all that is not easy.
No, I can only imagine. And so you had mentioned that the Apple App Store has really strict guidelines, but for the most part, people tend to like develop their app on iOS first, usually before developing on Android. Can you explain the reasoning behind this?
Well, I think there is a stat out there. I can't remember the source of it, but I believe the majority of creators are Apple iOS users, and so
Really?
they haven't
This is me speaking as like an Android user.
right.
Wait, hang on a second. Are you iOS or Android?
Yeah, I'm iOS
Oh, okay.
personally. Yeah, and so is our app. So, um, yeah, I mean, I think like the sort of early adopter mindset, the creator mindset, most of the creators gravitate towards iPhones. But I mean, obviously, there are plenty of Android creators out there as well. But I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of companies will start on iOS first. The other is that we don't we never start with perfect information when you have when you're starting up with an idea, and so
Right.
it's not like you can just develop the whole app and then launch and everything is a-okay. Like uh, TapeReal, in the example of TapeReal, we went through many iterations, many changes. We launch something a certain way, and then we realize, okay, that's not how users liked it, and so we had to kind of backtrack and rethink how to approach the problem. And so you're learning a lot along the way as well. You might think people are using your app, um, based on a certain set of behaviors, and meanwhile they're thinking of it in a completely different manner. Um, and so because you're still trying to figure stuff out, having to manage two different code bases can be challenging. Um, we decided to go with, uh, being iOS first, simply because you can also take advantage of some native iOS features that are not really available on Android. Um, and uh, and then obviously the cost and development time factor is there as well. So it's better to, in my opinion, to go through sort of the optimization cycles, work through all the kinks with
Mm,
one platform and one user
right.
base, and then release it on the second platform.
Okay. Good to know. And prior to your first round of equity on Equivesto, sorry, I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it. I know that TapeReal has been entirely self-funded, so I'm curious to know, like, what made you decide to start with like bootstrapping first prior to doing equity crowdfunding?
Well, I was looking for a co-founder for months and months and months, and it wasn't an easy task. I think I must have reached out to at least 250 different people
Oh wow.
uh, to tell them about the idea, to excite them about it, and offer them like a co-founder role or a CTO role, and to start building it. But yeah, I mean, it just got a lot of no's, and people didn't want to get involved for whatever reason. Maybe I didn't do a good enough job selling it. I'm not sure. But I believed in the idea that I didn't want to, not build it, and so I was like, okay, well, if no one's going to join me, I'm just going to have to build it, and then hopefully somebody comes across it, likes it enough, and really wants to be involved, and then I can explore that um, later on. And so, I also wanted to make sure that the people that were working with me on the project were also getting paid. I find that it just leads to a uh, better sort of work environment, more they'll build a better product because they know they're able to feed their families, less stress.
Right.
And so I kind of took on the burden of that on my end, instead of passing it on to the rest of the team. Um, and I think it's worked out well because our app is stable, it works, it's pretty reliable. It doesn't crash. It's not really like super buggy. Um, Most of the feedback we get is that it's an elegant and easy to use app, which you know I think may not have been the case if we were just kind of building this out of a garage without anybody being able to feed their families.
Yeah, that's really interesting and very admirable of you to decide to take on that burden, like on top of running the company and trying to build a tape reel. So then, with regarding like equity crowdfunding, what made you decide to go that route versus say looking into getting funding from venture capitalists? Or sorry, or like, have you received funding before from venture capitalists?
No, I haven't received any funding. I've pitched many people, many investors. Um, Unfortunately, like the way venture capital works, usually uh, you need to get a warm introduction to somebody within the firm, and so there's different layers that I was also learning,
Mm.
um, and I made some mistakes pitching along the way. Uh, you know, uh, this is all like a new experience to me, and um, all I could base it on was based on like a book that I read on venture capital funding and some blog posts and stuff like that. But no entrepreneur like has it all figured out. Now,
Right.
some genuinely are good at fundraising. Um, I believe I was watching This Week in Startups with Jason Calacanis, and he was interviewing this gentleman named Fad from Roach VC, and he was talking about an essay that he read where he said there's two types of entrepreneurs. There's like the fox, and the foxes are really good at raising capital. Like they know the game, they know the strategies, they know how to pitch, and they can raise funding, in a heartbeat. And then there's the other founders who are more like hedgehogs, where
Oh.
uh, they're just working away,
Mm.
focused on the product. And so I consider myself to be more hedgehog-like, I guess.
I could see like you people asking each other like they're entrepreneurs. Are you a fox or a hedgehog?
Yeah, I know. But
Sorry,
you can
continue.
tell, yeah, you can tell when you see the fox, you'll know because they're just like they have their pitch down really well, and they're just able to create that FOMO for
Mm.
VCs to invest. So I was facing some challenges on that front, trying to fundraise on my own, and so I decided to go through the equity crowdfunding route. And I think it kind of matches the sort of ethos that we're trying to build around TapeReal, putting people and creators first. And so we wanted to give this opportunity to, everyday people to invest in TapeReal, to own shares in this company and get in on the ground floor, as opposed to, um, you know, uh, the folks who regularly invest in startups.
Hmm. And so I'd like to talk more about Tape Reel itself. So, what type of content can be found on Tape Reel? You say like anything and everything, or there's like a certain type?
Well, we're seeing a variety of creators. Like there's a professor of innovation who posts like daily sort of snippets of motivational content. We see musicians posting music. Some of them have been locking their music as exclusives, so you have to kind of pay to listen to it. And then there's quite a few astrologers who have been posting like tarot card readings and monthly astrology readings. Basically, what you would see like on YouTube, but more early days of YouTube, is kind of
Mm.
like what we're seeing here on TapeReal. And I think that's uh, what I like most about it. Uh, is when you go on YouTube, it's kind of feels like a jungle out there. It's very algorithm based, and all the content creators are using the most high tech equipment.
I know, I see
The
it.
sound quality, the graphics and everything, right?
It's like a production.
Right? Yeah, that's like a Netflix production, and and the sort of the aspiring creators might feel intimidated in that crowd, and so TapeReal kind of offers them that uh, alternative where they can come here, be themselves, and not have that sort of pressure cooker environment to create. And what I find is that it actually allows creators to be more creative, to focus on their growth, to document their journey. Basically, when I look at the first tape that I posted on TapeReel, I can see how uh, I can see my own journey as a creator unfold. I can see how my own speaking skills, changed and improved over time. I can see the evolution of, or hear the evolution of my thoughts that I share, and uh, I kind of like that as the aspect of tape reel, like this idea of documenting while creating, which is kind of unique.
Yeah, and I think it makes it more real too, not of a pun. Of like you can be real on tape reel.
Exactly, and you get to see how people kind of grow and evolve as individuals, right? Which is interesting, and fun to watch.
hmm And given like the current group of creators you have on TapeReel, are there any certain ones you recommend like following? Are there any certain ones you'd like to give a shout out to?
Yeah, a recent creator who joined, her name is Janice Norley. She's an older lady, but her content is very mindfulness focused. She talks about the like she'll include. I'm an astrology junkie myself,
Oh,
so
okay.
she'll include like the position of the moon and how it may be affecting how you're feeling, and she kind of gets into um, you know uh, j- helping people kind of tune in into who they are or how they're feeling, which is inspiring. And when you're on other social media, it's always just like information coming all at you.
Mm.
I find when I go to TapeReel, it's like I can focus, I can listen, and I can consume content in a very different way.
And with that being said, actually, kind of I think segues into my next question, just about regarding social media in general. And it's enabled us to connect with each other and different people in so many ways possible. But at the same time too, we can be disconnected when we're with people in person. Like people are constantly checking their phones even though they're having an in-person conversation. Or I remember coming across an article saying that people are spending more time at the restaurants because they're taking much longer, because they're taking pictures of their food and then posting it on
Hmm.
social media. So I'm really curious to know just about like your thoughts on how social media has become so integrated with our lives, and given the fact that you are the CEO and founder of a social media app.
Yeah, that's a great question. Social media, I think, is a great servant, but a horrible master.
Mm.
And if you use it in the right way, it can be beneficial. Uh, but you kind of have to have the self-awareness to know the underworkings behind social media. Now, all social media platforms are basically driven by an ad-based revenue model. That's why the product is free. Now, unfortunately, uh, the only way to generate more revenue is to get people more engaged on the platform, get them coming back more often. And so the business model uh, is uh, based on getting people addicted. And
Mm,
they'll do whatever they can to then boost engagement. So in the case of um, most social media platforms, this could mean the surfacing of polarizing content, fake news, stuff that might enrage you or get you to comment.
mm,
And I feel like um, social platforms should have a responsibility to the user to basically safeguard the health of the user. Uh, and you know, it's I think more and more people are realizing sort of the uh, dopamine effects that you get from social media, um, and and many I think have also kind of um, slowed down their sort of engagement with these platforms. When you have documentaries coming out on Netflix like The Social Dilemma, and you got the whistleblower for Facebook coming out sharing like stats on how uh, these platforms are negatively impacting the mental health of teens, etc. People I think are realizing it, and I think they're hungry for human connection now, and alternative platforms where it's not about getting you addicted and engaged all the time. Um, I've seen people like I've because I do like obviously market research and look at what other apps are doing, and sometimes they have like features that can appear quite novel and interesting, but then like as soon as you use it, you realize, oh, like this is going down that cycle of being addicted and you know uh, always having notifications and that dopamine sort of rush that you get. And I don't know if that's good and healthy. I think that's part of the reason why a lot of the newer platforms target younger users first,
mm,
because they don't know any better. Um, and it's kind of sad. I mean, as a parent myself, that's also one of the motivations that I have is to create a platform that allows people to um, share and create and focus on their art as opposed to, oh, I gotta achieve a certain level of fame or go viral on this platform, and that's gonna be my definition of success.
Yeah, I feel like as a creator, you have that pressure for other social media platforms, and as you mentioned, and then also like as a consumer, which you're talking about the addiction piece, and it came to mind like thinking how it's almost kind of like the way they've designed it, and I'm pretty sure I got this from a book I've read in the past, at how it's like slot machines. You just want to keep on putting in the coins and get the, you want to increase your chances, or you want to keep on trying to get like all three cherries, right? So
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's just
absolutely.
crazy.
And TikTok is exactly like a slot machine because it's just an endless stream of content. Yeah, when I use something like TikTok, I just feel like my own attention span like gets very short, uh, and I have to like turn off my TikTok mindset to like come back to reality. Um, and that's part of the reason why I don't like using that app. And it's kind of scary because it is very very addictive. Many people, like if you go to the App Store and read the comments that people leave, like all of them, oh, it's so addictive. I love it. This and that. But it's like,
It's like I love the addiction.
right.
That's hilarious. Yeah, mind you, I don't have
So,
a TikTok account. I feel like I'm too old and already trying to juggle like all the various social media accounts I have already. I'm not even sure I can like add on another one to my plate to like consume.
right.
Yeah, so we talked about the the business models for the current social media apps there. So I'd also like for you to describe in more detail how creators can monetize their content on TapeReal.
Yeah, so we've built a very simple monetization mechanism where before you publish your content, you can mark it as an exclusive and set a price for unlocking it.
Oh,
Um, and when you lock it and you, let's say you charge I don't know, 10 real coins, 11 real coins. Um,
sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. Is real coins like the kind of like a currency in TapeReal?
Yeah, it's the in-app currency that we use to allow the viewer to purchase from the creator.
Okay.
So you don't have to provide like credit card information. You don't have to
Oh, okay.
subscribe. The creator locks that content. If that is something that you want to unlock, you'll get to watch the first 20 seconds for free, and
Oh, like a
then
preview, right?
you'll get a paywall. If you have the real coins in your wallet, you just unlock it, and then you can watch the rest of the content as many times as you want after. So it basically creates a little bit of exclusivity between the creator and the audience or the fan, um, and uh, the cool part is that whatever price that the creator charges, they get to keep in terms of their earnings. So they can cash out their real coins from their wallet once they reach 100 US dollar in value.
Mhm.
Each real coin is worth 9 cents. So based on however many people unlock your content, or how much you're charging for your content,
Right.
uh, you can start cashing out in US dollars once you reach 100.
Okay. Yeah, that's a really interesting idea. So with growing concerns around like privacy and data being shared, and we talked about the existing social media platforms out there and how you're, forging your own path and creating something different like TapeReal. Do you think like more people will gravitate to certain apps like TapeReal, or I'm just curious, because we're so like addicted to these particular social media apps and the way they work. I'm just wondering, like, do you think people have a hard time like adjusting, or they'll like feel it's very refreshing and then like quickly gravitate toward it?
Well, it's a mixed bag because some people understand like right out the gate that, hey, if the product is free, I know my data is going to be used, and they're okay with that. Um, and some people, I think, take it a little bit more seriously based on what and the research that I've come across and what I'm seeing, just how things are unfolding in the marketplace. Apple is more focused on privacy now. With their iOS 14 updates, it really impacted the ad industry as a whole, the online ad industry, especially Facebook and Google. It's limited their ability to track users within the Apple ecosystem. And a majority of people, when asked whether they want to share their data, will say no. I think
Hmm.
it's like almost 80 to 90%.
Right.
And so, I think the numbers speak for themselves. People do care about their privacy. They just were never uh, given the mechanisms to enable that privacy
Mm.
because it was all about like, oh, sync your contacts. Okay, now I know everyone in your address book, and I can send out invites to them, and with because you just quickly tapped OK.
Yeah, I know. I
Um,
think I'm pretty guilty of doing that. Just like, to
yeah,
get me like quicker access to the app. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, like just blindly clicking.
right. So I think privacy is going to be a key thing for the future. People are going to preserve more of it, and uh, you know, uh, and I th- I'm building for that future where people will be just sick and tired of platforms where their data is being used unethically, and will gravitate towards alternatives or options that are available to them.
That's really fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing your insight. So I'd like to ask you some more like entrepreneurial based questions. And again, just kind of circling back to like I think it's very impressive that you've, started like 5 companies, like that's one whole hand. And compared to some people, they usually start like one. And but yeah, five is truly amazing. So given you've started that many companies, how do you know when a company has run its course or and it's time to move on to the next idea? Or at least like in your experience?
Yeah, that's a tough question to answer. You never have perfect information.
Mm,
Sometimes you could be close, and then you give up, and
right.
then a little while later somebody else
Mm.
picks up where you left off, and suddenly it
Explodes.
becomes, yeah. And that happened when I was working on Bubble Finder. So I remember one day, me and these two interns that were working with me, we started at the top of Yonge Street in Toronto, which is like around North York. And they took one side of the street, I took one side of the street, and we basically went down. We walked down and went door to door to every single business to try and get them to sign up to tape
Wow.
to Bubble Finder. And just going through that experience, you learn a lot about, do you have what it takes to continue doing this or not? And one of the feedback, like when we finally reached the bottom of Young Street, which was like the core of downtown, I think it was like the last restaurant that I had knocked on. Um, he actually seemed interested. So after all these no's, it was like
Oh,
finally
yes.
somebody is like excited about this, and he's like, I really like what you're doing here, but if only this you could deliver the food.
Mm,
And this was like around 2010, 2011. So, the idea of Uber wasn't really out yet. That whole sort of model of like, you know, uh, people, uh, uh, what's it called? The There's a term for it. Gig workers. People would be like sitting around idly with their cars and ready to deliver stuff or pick
mm,
you up and drop you off somewhere. That whole model wasn't there yet. And when he said that, I was like, oh man, how am I going to build like some kind of delivery infrastructure for this? Like,
yeah.
it didn't really clue into me that, hey, I could use this model and continue. And so um, it was insightful feedback. But at that point, um, I decided, okay, what, this is going to be too challenging for me to kind of build on my own here, and so I decided to shut it down. And then it was only a few, I think, years later. I think within a couple of years is when Skip the Dishes and all these other delivery food delivery apps started coming out. So
Mhm.
I would say it's really hard to know when to stop because you could just be really close to that, diamond mine,
Yeah.
and suddenly, you give up. So one of the key things to success in, I think, entrepreneurship is persistence and being willing to continue to forge ahead. Now, there are obvious signals and signs that the idea is not good. Um, and sometimes people have a tough time accepting that too. So, it's a sensitive sort of topic, and there's no real, surefire way of knowing. I think listening to your community is one indication. Having mentors that can maybe guide you is also helpful. Um, in my second one, AdFits, I had an advisory board. While they were, helpful, uh, I think they were also very candid with their feedback in terms of like whether the idea could work or not work,
Right.
which helped me understand like, okay, should I continue focusing on this, or should I pivot it, um, or should I just hang it up? And at that point, for my own reasons, I decided I didn't want to go into the advertising space, just because there was way too many layers, and people were locked into those layers that it was really difficult for them to uh, kind of break out of it. So yeah.
Yeah, that's really great advice, and thank you so much for sharing your experience. Like, yeah, can't even imagine, like, that's true dedication, just going like door to door, like the entire street,
Yeah,
asking
I
people
know.
to sign on. Wow.
It was tough. It'll toughen your skin, that's for sure, right? When
Yeah.
you deal with a lot of no's, and um, yeah. So
All right. One of my final questions for you is, who is an entrepreneur you admire and why?
um, well, I really like Jeff Lawson. He's the founder of Twilio. I've heard him speak quite a few times, and I always find, uh, his the way he built his organization, some of the things he talks about on his entrepreneurial journey. Uh, I I was I found it really fascinating and insightful. The other founders that I admire are the founders of Mailchimp. Now, the cool thing about Mailchimp is that it was a bootstrap company from day one, and that's one thing that I really like about that
Mm.
company. And 20 years later, they were acquired,
Oh, wow.
but that it's a true bootstrap success story. The founders of Basecamp are like that as well, and so for me, being in the position that I'm in, um, I, f- I find that inspiring. That hey, if others can do it, then you know why not anybody else?
Yeah.
Um, you set your own limitations, and funding doesn't always have to define uh, your success in a startup journey. Um, so yeah, those are some of and then the obvious ones like Steve Jobs as an innovator
Hmm.
um, was also very inspiring.
Cool. All right. So, if people wanted to learn more about Tape Reel and yourself, where can they find you?
Yeah, they can go to tapereel.com. They can download our app. I'm on the app. I post audio, video updates. I share my thoughts, occasional moments from my day, and just random uh, projects or things that I'm working on. Um, my username is at Ali. Uh, and if you want your own, unique username, now's the time to get in and reserve it before it gets taken by somebody else. And I'm also on LinkedIn. Um, I try not to use some of the other social media platforms. I find, yeah, I mean, even for TapeReal itself, uh, I just find it strange promoting a social platform on another social platform.
Right.
So, uh, So yeah, like within TapeReal, you can find me or on LinkedIn.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for joining me on this conversation today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me on your show. I really appreciate it.
Thanks everyone for tuning in and stay tuned for more episodes. Ciao for now.